There are 339 books in the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge, and I'm going to read all of them, and I mean every single last one of them. The Reading Challenge includes all of the books that Rory Gilmore read or talked about during the run of the highly popular mid-2000s TV series Gilmore Girls. The show was very popular for its numerous cultural references, and a lot of those pop culture references came from the books that Rory read during the series. Now, to put an additional spin on the challenge, I'm going to read the books in random order, so stay until the end of the video where we spin the wheel to find out what our next book in the challenge is going to be. So today we have book 4 in the challenge, which means we are officially done with 1% of the challenge, which sounds absolutely daunting considering how many books there are left. We have a memoir today, reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. The book is a memoir, it's biography set during the Islamic Iranian Revolution of the 1970s up to 1990s. As always, let me know if you know where this book shows up in the TV series Gilmore Girls. If anybody is able to find it out, please let us know in the comments below. Reading Lolita in Tehran is basically a story about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a longer book this time, which is why I just finished it a few hours ago. But I do want to keep up the schedule of reading one book per week to at least some point in the future be able to finish this challenge of 339 books. Reading Lolita in Tehran is a very special memoir, a biography told through the eyes of an American Iranian writer, Azar Nafisi, during the 1970s up to 1990s. The interesting thing about her is that she has grown up during a time where Iran was more free, was more open, was more westernized. She had a lot more liberties during that time. And then she was sent to Switzerland for her education. She briefly came back to Tehran, but then finished her studies and had most of her education in the West, in the US, I believe, somewhere in Oklahoma, which means that she has been very westernized. She has been free in her thoughts, in her expressions. And then in the late 70s, she comes back to Tehran and she is starting a teaching position at the University of Tehran. During that time, the Islamic Revolution happens, which means a lot more stricter Islamic rules and regulations and more traditional values are being introduced into the country. And she has a very difficult time dealing with those rules and regulation naturally, as she has been, used to having all those freedoms, and they are now slowly, piece by piece, taken from her. Not being able to walk outside unsupervised by a male, not being able to go out to movies, cinemas, not being able to go to a restaurant with friends and talk openly about things. Basically, where a turning point comes is where she is being forced to wear a veil and to conceal herself, which she is not used to, which she does not want to do, which she completely disagrees with, that kind of regulation being forced upon her and women like her. She is refusing to wear a veil at the university. She continues to do so. She is basically started to being bullied by more traditional Islamic groups, from teachers, from the dean of the university, as well as from even students, more and more challenging her. And she is within that environment still trying to do the best to teach English literature. And she is trying to do that through, thought-provoking stories like, for example, Lolita, as it is in the name, or The Great Gatsby. More traditional students and more Islamic students, they keep challenging her, not based on the content, based on the story itself, but based on what they believe that the book teaches in the sense of that it inflicts Western values and un-Islamic values on the people, and it should not be books that ought to be taught in Tehran in the university. So oftentimes these students, they seemingly didn't even read the books, and they are just preaching religion and preaching Islam upon her without even challenging the actual message of the book. I should add that, with this challenge, quite a lot of the books that she's mentioning through her story and that she teaches are actually part of the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. And except for The Great Gatsby, I did not read any of the books that are mentioned in the story, which is a little bit of a pity, because I do feel that having read a lot of the books that she talks about would provide additional value to the reading experience of her memoirs. Nevertheless, she is trying to use those books and still trying to teach the students, because there's still a lot that are more, should I say, modern and want to learn from the books, but the environment where she's teaching in is getting increasingly more hostile, up to a point where one of her colleagues that also teaches at the University of Iran is, meeting up with her and saying, "Oh, I quit my job," or she was let go. I don't remember. But the gist of the story is that she came up to the entrance of the university and was also not willing to put on a veil. And during that discussion then with the dean, she was basically kicked out. And to get ahead of the same thing happening to her and with the hostile situation at the university, Azar basically decides, I'm going to leave the university. I cannot teach in a hostile situation like that. Through that, then she enters a period of where she really does not know what to do. And she is a little bit lost in her ways and doesn't know how life should continue for her, until she starts like a secret book club where she has some of her most interested students come by her house and she's teaching them the stories there. A little bit later on, a few years later, she's taking up a new post at a little bit more liberal university and starts teaching there again. During the whole time period, she is left asking herself, what can I contribute in this environment, because left and right people are being imprisoned for no reason basically, and people are being executed in the streets for not following the Islamic way, basically, of the new state, of the new government. And she is very torn during that period. On the one side, she feels like it's her country, it's her identity, and she should try to contribute as much as possible. But on the other hand, for herself, she feels increasingly more unsafe in Tehran. She receives every now and then from students that are more extreme in their beliefs. She receives threats, death threats. This comes down to a point where she starts deliberating, should I leave Tehran? Should I emigrate to the US, basically? The last drop is then when one day she meets up with what she calls her magician. I believe from reading the book, it's kind of a mentor-mentee situation that she has. And she's sitting in a coffee together with that man, having a glass of tea and some pastry, basically. And then the morality police comes by, and her mentor tells her, "Oh, please, sit away. We don't want to get into any trouble." And of course, he also doesn't want her to get into any trouble. But for her, at that point, then it makes basically click. It's like, okay, I'm living in a place where I can't even go out and have a discussion about life, about my thoughts with a mentor, with a male friend of mine, without risking being imprisoned and disappearing from one day to the other. And that's basically when she takes the decision, okay, I have to leave, I have to get out of this country. A lot about this book also focuses on the individual experiences of her female students that she has over to her home for private classes, where they discuss books, but then more and more increasingly they also discuss their personal and private lives. And a lot of the discussions in this book club, in this book group, go into that direction of taking a book and then, applying it to their life and their situation, and discussing that with the girls in the group. Now, I have two issues with this book. Issue number one is it's very drawn out. It's sometimes just too much, almost a rereading or almost a book review that Azar is doing herself on the books that she is reading with the students. So there's pages upon pages where you just, discuss Lolita or discuss The Great Gatsby, and it just never seems to stop. And she, comes back to it. And there's too small of a part of it is actual memoirs and actual life experiences, and too big a part of it, for me at least, is those books and talking about those books and the actual plot of the books. And the other thing is the timeline is absolutely confusing in the book. So she is jumping back and forth between, her time in the US, her time in Switzerland, her time in first time back in Tehran, and then back to the US, and then back to, teaching at Tehran University, and then back to the US, and then looking forwards, and then back to teaching at a different university, and then there is the book club. And it's very difficult reading the story to kind of have the timeline clear in the mind for you, which makes it a very confusing read, unfortunately. The book itself, the memoir and her experiences were very interesting, very thought-provoking. It's, I guess, a unique perspective to read from a woman that has experienced that, time of growing up in a more Western Iran, and then a Western education, coming back to a very strict Islamic Tehran. It's a very interesting read. I did enjoy it. I rated the book as 3 out of 5 stars, which, you guys know, for me that's a good book. It's not great. It's not something that I would consider one of my absolute top favorites, but it was a very enjoyable read. It was an interesting read. A bit long for my taste. It could have been shortened down. But I'm glad that we did that. I'm glad that I read this book. And I did learn a lot about history. I did learn a lot about the Islamic revolution of that time, which is very valuable, I believe. Yeah, so that's it. Let me know, have any of you guys read Lolita in Tehran? What did you think about the book? What did you take away from it? What do you believe are the most valuable lessons in it? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's see what we are going to get as our next challenge in the book. I'm very hopeful that we get a short, light, nice novel after this more heavy read that we had with reading Lolita and Tehran. So let's see. So as always, I have my wheel here with the remaining 335 books in the Rory Gilmore challenge. So let's spin the wheel and see what our next book is going to be in the challenge. Let's go. Come on, come on, come on. Something good, something good. Let's see. What do we get? Oh, that's great. So we have Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. This is one of the very few books that I did read before this challenge, but I have decided, since I only read about, I think, 5 or 6 books in the challenge, I am going to do a reread, and I am going to do a review and a video on each of the books I already read before. So in the next video, we are going to have Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. See you then. Bye bye.